All right. Hello, John Sergott. Good evening.
Hey, Stacie,
So
and to all of my adoring fans, welcome.
welcome all of you. This is an exciting evening. This is the first of hopefully several interviews that John and I are going to have talking about this exciting new project that he has. John, do you want to just tell us a little bit about what this is? I mean, this is basically, in my mind, this is a celebration of 30 plus years of music that you've been creating and writing songs and making music and creating this soul feeding
Hmm.
project, and we get to celebrate it. And we're going to celebrate it bit by bit, right, over the next year.
Mhm.
But maybe tell us a little bit about how this came to be, what the goal is, what the hope is.
Yeah,
Just, yeah, some background behind it.
yeah, that's good. I think you you kind of just summed it up pretty well, Stacie. Thank you for doing this interview too. This is cool. So I've been writing songs since. I mean, really, I remember. Just going to start by telling stories right away. I
Love it.
remember I had one of those. They didn't have the brand First Act at the time, but when I was, I don't know, like 8 years old or something. This is before first grade. We lived in Iron River, Michigan, and I had one of those little ukulele kind of four-string guitars. And I
Yeah.
remember there, I don't even remember her name or what she looked like, but there was a girl in school who I kind of liked in whatever preschool or whatever I was in.
Yep.
And I remember sitting in the car kind of plunking the strings, trying to make up a song for this girl. So I think just instinctively, I knew from a very young age, I'm probably not going to be good at athletics.
Mm.
Uh, and so I'm going to need something to
Girls.
make myself compelling so that I can find a girl to marry me someday. So, but then it was, I don't know how long later, we were still in Iron River, that I caught my brother taking that guitar and smashing it. And he said, I was just being like Kiss. Because he's, one of those bands that would smash their guitars at the end of the show. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Uh, so point is, I've been writing songs for probably just about 35 years in earnest. I'm turning 50 this year. And really, I have a wife, I have three kids, I have a job. I was in a band for a long time. But somehow on the side, I just always write songs through all the
Yeah.
different phases of my life. I've been writing songs and I record them because I like doing it. I started doing that in high school. And I just have, sometimes I go through and I have this kind of running, I call it like a mother list of all of my songs, like work in progress songs, finished songs, songs that have been on my albums. On my wall, I should have actually done this with my studio wall behind me. I have all the records I made, like the cover is kind of framed on the wall. Uh, I always kind of like Tom Petty or somebody, like he makes records. I make records too. He's just better at
Just
it.
like Tom Petty, you make
Yeah.
records.
Right. I'm just like, Greg Allman or Dylan, just like that.
Same
Except I
thing.
have a job and all that, and I don't have the resources and the time to devote to become really good. But I just thought so many people, myself included, I don't even hear these songs that much because, okay, I have them
Mhm.
on CDs or this and that. So I'm just going to put together this kind of box set of my whole songwriting life. The working title, not the working title, but I just call it 50 Box, 50 Box. But I call it 50 Box because I'm, pretty gangster, obviously. And
Yeah, obviously.
so I just started compiling all the songs. What do I have already recorded? Or what's like, I have all these
Mhm.
kind of like Prince was famous for, he has this vault in his basement. He had a recording studio in his basement in this big palace there in Minneapolis and just has reels and reels and reels of songs he's written and recorded that nobody's ever heard. And mine is a much smaller version of all that, but I have just a ton of songs. I said, I want to make a collection that sort of goes through my whole life. And so what I'm going to do on the practical side, like on the tangible side,
Mhm.
is this whole year of my 50th birthday is in September. I'm going to release the first disc, and then it's going to be 6 discs, one every other month throughout the whole year. So it'll be six like full length discs, kind of like Taylor Swift eras.
Yes, for the kids, this is like Taylor Swift
It's like Taylor Swift, like Tom Petty or
or
Greg.
Prince or Taylor Swift. I mean, yeah, except for that you're a bit more gangster than that.
Yeah, I'm a little bit more gangster. I'm not Miley Cyrus gangster, but I'm pretty gangster. But yeah, and so yeah, it's 50. I'm turning 50. I want to just do something to kind of maybe a bit of legacy in it. I'm not, why do you do it? I don't know exactly, other than I'm compelled. And that's always been the thing. Like,
Mm.
my best friend Robert is always kind of like, well, there's no money in it. And like, why? I'm like, because it's as good as such. And
Yes.
I can do it. Like Flannery O'Connor. She was like,
Right.
why
What
do
we're
you write
talking.
novels? Why do you write stories? She says, well, the first answer is because I can. You know what I mean? Like she's good
Yep,
at it.
absolutely. She's good at it. Right. And
uh,
I have been listening to your music for years and for all of the albums
for real,
that you've
Stacie, you're one
actually
of my biggest
released.
fans.
And I can say from sort of an independent standpoint, it's hard for you to say and still kind of sound humble, right?
Yeah.
But you're good at it. You
Thank
write
you.
good songs. They're worth hearing.
Thank
And
you.
the songs on this first release that you're doing, because like you said, you're kind of going through these
Yep.
stages. There's songs that I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe one or two of them I've heard, but mostly I don't. Because you're throwing all the way back, right? To like
Yep.
high school days, early 20s, going back
Yeah.
to this.
Really, the song "Dime to My Name," which I think will be the song. I'm still mixing it. So actually, already it's probably sounding better than what I sent you a couple weeks
Okay.
ago. Uh, that I think was the first full song I wrote, like in earnest, where I went, "That's a completed song," and I recorded a version of it way back. I think it was either high school or like right after high school.
Okay. I
And I
kind
had
of
been
want to touch on
writing in
that.
high school and all that, but nothing that ever kind of stuck, if you know what I mean.
Gotcha. Yep. I
And
want to talk specifically about Dime to My Name in a little bit, so don't maybe say too much
yep.
about it yet.
But I'm going to geek out for just a sec.
Yeah.
So that would have been like the late 80s. And so we were recording on this thing. So the nerds, if there's any nerds listening who are into this kind of thing, will be like almost every older guy who is into home recording, you say Tascam Porta 7, and they totally know what you're talking about. It's like this big, and you put a little cassette tape in it, and it has 4 channels. So you can do 4 tracks, and you can multi-track that way. And it's on cassette, and there's like 2 knobs for each thing for you to edit. You know, it was absolutely bare bones. But I remember maybe the song was even finished. If it's even finished now, Dime to My Name. But I remember putting tracks on that, I think in high school, in my mom's garage at any rate. So either in high school or sometime before I turned 28 and moved out.
Yeah. Putting tracks down in the garage. That's actually the story, right? For all of the people. So yeah.
That or in my my office. Maybe one of these times if we do another one of these, I'll do it on a phone and kind of give a quick tour of the glamorous John Sergott recordings.
I'm hoping that when we do another one of these, I'll be on site and then we can do it on site.
Wouldn't that be fun?
Mm-hmm. At least for one of these 6, right? Like I'm gonna
and have Iggy set up the cameras and stuff for us, so we can be like.
That's right. That's what Iggy's for.
Well, he's just the tech guy. He loves that stuff.
Nice.
He's the one who helped me set up the Zoom meeting for us.
Nice. Okay, I have another sort of like big background question, and then maybe we'll get into some of the music. Actually, I have a few things I want to ask about, but whatever, we'll see.
Mm-hmm. And I'll let you keep an eye on time. It's Friday. It was a really tough week, so I'm going to sit here and chat with my friend Stacie and have a couple drinks and answer questions.
Sounds good to me. We'll probably record way more than what you need to use, and then Iggy can cut it down, and it'll be great. So you were talking about, starting in earnest, like in high school. And I know some of these songs come into your 20s or whatever. And you kind of answered this question a little bit when you were talking about Robert, like, why do this? And you're like, well, because I can. Which I think is a good enough reason, honestly. I like that reason. I don't really know how to articulate this question. It's kind of a chicken or the egg question. One of the things, I think you're good at 2 things. Well, I think you're good at more than 2 things.
Thank you.
I think you're good at.
You should see me juggle. You've never even seen me juggle yet.
I've never even seen you juggle. What the heck? I don't know. but when it comes to music, I kind of equal parts impressed with your musical ability, which I think is outstanding.
Thank you.
Drumming, guitar playing. I know you can like sort of pick up an instrument and play around with it and figure it out and play around and sound good. So musically, I think you're talented. I don't know much about that. It's just like, oh, it sounds good to me, right? But then also just as a writer, and I can stand on this, it's a little firmer ground for me and say, like, you're a good writer.
You are a good writer.
Right? And I appreciate good writing. I appreciate good lyrics.
Yeah.
I was that girl when I bought a CD back in the day. I would take out the lining and read the lyrics. I would look for who the songwriters were, and I'd be like, oh, no wonder I like these 3 songs the best. They're all the same writer. Like, just that's something I'm more aware of.
Mhm.
So as I was listening to your songs and enjoying the music very much, and there's some musical stuff that I think is cool, but
Mhm.
also enjoying some of the lyrics, and not just this set of 9 songs that you're releasing right
Mhm.
now, but
Mhm.
over the years too. The question that I have in my mind is like, when you started out, like,
Yeah.
what comes first, right? Is it like, well, I have these cool ideas that I'm kind of like writing poetry, writing music, or writing words, right? And then
Yep.
maybe I could set that to music, or is it like, I enjoyed playing guitar, I like banging around on the drums, and then like, ooh, maybe there's
Yeah.
some words that would, or is it more organic than that? I don't know.
That's, I would say, I think my gut tells me, I don't know, but my gut tells me most songwriters who have been at it for a while will tell you that it kind of just depends on the song and where you
Okay.
like. Sometimes I remember there's been times where I've been sitting at a piano. I remember I used to work at a retreat center in the middle of nowhere in rural Illinois. And they had a little piano. It was like this big house that they used for retreats and stuff. And I was just by myself and I'm sitting there and started coming up with song ideas. I don't know how to play piano. I know kind of the theory, but I can't actually play.
Right.
But
Right.
I can play enough to figure out the theory enough to be able to add little piano parts to songs. But I'm not a piano player by any stretch. And sometimes when we get to, I don't remember which disc it's going to be, but the song iPod Shuffle was an example of this. And I won't go
Ooh,
deep
I'm
into it,
excited
but
to talk about that song when we get there.
I love that song. I was sharing
Mm-hmm.
lyrics of that on Instant Message with a friend of mine today. Just I'm so proud of that song. But we're
Mm-hmm.
sitting there listening to a Paul Simon interview, and he was talking about how the singles are like the thing now with the downloading. You get the singles. So
Yes.
the album
Right.
era is kind of coming to an end.
So
And it just hit me. Sometimes I feel like a song taken from the album Where I Belong. And I even heard the melody in my head without
mm-hmm.
an instrument or anything. And my wife and I were sitting there and living. We were newly married and she wasn't used to the weirdness of living with a songwriter. I was like, I have to go somewhere different and write this song. And I boom. And by I was up till 1 in the morning and the song was done, more or less. It was some
So
editing.
you had a line, and then everything else
Yeah.
came from
Times I feel like a song
it.
taken from the album Where I Belong. Boom. And I had to go and just figure out what are the chords for that? What's the melody really? And, but then too, there's times where you come up with a guitar part and sort of humming. Yeah.
Yeah. So it can go either way. It's just
John Lennon, uh, great Beatles guy, songwriter. He says it's like they just, like he didn't have a Christian worldview in any way, but
mm-hmm.
he said it's like it just sort of drops on you. And
Mm.
the best songs I've ever written, they're not all like this. Sometimes you kind of roll up your sleeves, you have an idea and you kind of work at it.
Sure.
But the best songs I've ever written are like that, where you feel like the whole thing just drops.
Mm-hmm.
Usually, like I'm about to go to sleep or some really inopportune time. And then my
Right.
job is to clear out everything because I've been given this gift and to sort of almost like you put the puzzle pieces on the table and you have to put it together.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then
I mean, I
sometimes
definitely have had writing experiences like that where I'm like,
yeah,
oh, this is what I need to talk about. Boom, boom,
mhm.
boom, boom. Here it is. And those are the best pieces for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Because you feel like it's just kind of coming through you.
Right. Right.
I like to attribute that to more something like what we would call the Holy Spirit. Are we allowed to say Holy Spirit on
This is your project if you want.
canceled by YouTube?
Well, possibly. I feel like this day and age, John, if we're canceled by YouTube, it just means we're doing something right.
Yeah, right. Hate speech. What?
All right. All right. Well, I want to talk about some of your songs.
Great.
Actually, wait, I'm gonna back up just
Mhm.
1 minute. I know we talked before we started the official interview that you don't have like a settled name for the project.
Right.
And that's fine.
There's no name for the project. Right now, my working title is called Great Value because it's kind of funny and it's a little bit self-deprecating, but also it's kind of true in that like my recordings are pretty cheap. It's home recording stuff. I'm not a great producer, so it comes out more like sketches and it's cheap because I'm just going to put it on Spotify and you just listen to it.
Right.
So it is and it is like Tom Petty, but cheaper and not quite as good.
The Great Value version. Yeah. I'm okay. So I love the title, the idea of calling it Great Value.
Yeah.
For the reasons that you said, but also because I think it actually is of great value. Right?
Oh, interesting. I never thought of that. Isn't that funny?
Because the thing is, we live currently in a culture that is so dehumanizing, right?
Yeah.
And the things that are good for the human person, that are good for the human soul, have been so devalued.
Yeah.
Here's music, poetry, like things that feed that are human and are humanizing.
Yep.
Really are of great value, right? So you have this sort of like, oh, self-deprecating, oh, great value, like the Walmart brand knockoff of Tom Petty. But at the same time, like what you're making is actually of great value.
That's cool, Stacie. Thank you. That's a cool way to think of it. That actually makes me more want to use that title.
Yeah.
Because I hadn't thought of that element of it.
So anyway, I don't know, take it for what you want with that. But for me, I feel like it's like, because of like the duality of the meaning of that, I think it's a good title.
And you know what's interesting too? There's still a whole lot of music business, but a lot of it is like the music element of the music. Like there's always going to be a financial aspect to it and a commercial aspect to it. But really, video killed the radio star means just that. Like you get down to it, and what we have now is more immediately what can sell, which is kind of a pop beat and a really sexy girl, mostly naked.
Yes, 100%.
And so the music per se has been devalued.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's kind of the cult of, obviously, the commercial aspects, but the cult of youth, the just sort of hyper eroticism of everything in our culture.
Yeah.
In that, the actual art of music, like I don't think you could have somebody like a Paul Simon right now, kind of coming up,
100%
actually getting nurtured. But he had every bit of commercial savvy. Like he wanted to make hit records, but at that time, there was a really, like, I would say the 60s, the 70s, and into the 80s, the commercial and the artistic kind of had a pretty decent relationship.
The music still really wanted music to say something.
Right. And producers would work with an artist over years and cultivate them and help them get better, help them to promote them, help them get gigs.
Right.
Now the record companies wait until you're already successful and they find a way to just scam you, make you super huge, but scam most of it into their pockets. And there's no sense of community or artistry. Not no sense of artistry. I referenced Miley Cyrus. I love Miley Cyrus's album.
She's got artistry, for sure.
She is fantastic songwriter. And most of my friends are like, dude, what? Don't watch the videos, listen to the record. She's fantastic.
Just actually listen. Yeah. But that's part of the problem, is that most consumers of media at this point, they're not doing that. They're not listening to the lyrics. They're not even so much listening to the music. They're seeing a glossy video.
Right? Yeah, totally. And when people send me a new song, they always send me the YouTube video. Absolutely. And I always minimize it so I can hear the song first.
Yes. Like, just listen to the song and see if the song's any good.
Yeah. Because I actually like songs. Anyway, can I tell a quick story? Is that okay?
Yeah, please.
I'm just thinking, since this is the first disc and this is the opening one, I was going through this isn't even the story I'm going to tell. I was going through my binder of all my stuff to pull out just these in case I wanted to look at the lyrics for this record. And I'm like, oh, this is cool. This is cool. This is cool. I can't wait to talk about, oh yeah, the song from this record. Yeah, it's all right. You know, like this songwriting, like I'm a brand new songwriter in this. It's not my best stuff. But I wanted to tell a quick story about how I started, like, okay, I do it because I can and because it's got value, all that stuff. How did I start doing it though, right? Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. I want to know.
So 2 stories real quick. One of them, we had one of those old stereos, big, huge ones that looked like a big bookcase kind of a thing in the living room. And I had one of those big sets of headphones, and I had an album of Kenny Rogers. I don't remember Kenny Rogers in first edition or new edition. I can't remember. But it had the song, Let's Go Out in a Blaze of Glory. I was like 8 years old. I didn't know what the song was talking about, which is we're going to break up, so let's have sex. But I didn't know that at the time.
You didn't know that?
I didn't know that. I was 8. You know, I was a sheltered kid. You know, I was oppressed, frankly. And I listened to it over and over. And I must have sat there and listened to it for like 3 days straight and did almost nothing else. It just, something about and they had this, let's go out. They had that like low harmony. They had all these harmonies and the rhythms and the recordings back then, late 70s, early 80s was, they had mastered the reel. The reel, so it was so warm and it breathed. And I could hear it, and I could hear that back then. Both of my ears worked, so I could hear the stereo imagery, and like you could hear the guitar over here. Oh my gosh. I still every now and then will play that song and just remember that. And I would kind of sing it, but I couldn't hear myself. So I was way out of key and shut up. So that's what first was the first thing that kind of like something is going on, like something is resonating in a deeper place in my heart with music, right? And then years later, when I was a freshman in high school, my 8th grade summer girlfriend broke up with me to date the senior quarterback.
Oh man. Woo.
Yeah, and this was Green Bay too. So you're the senior quarterback, and a totally broken heart. But at the time, all I had been listening to was like hair metal.
Mhm.
Okay. Because I was in a band called Bad Habits and we were crushing the hair metal. But then somehow it was within that year, just all devastated, listening to like I Remember You by Skid Row and stuff. People aren't going to watch this, are they? Anyway, and then a friend of mine showed me Dylan, and I listened to Bob Dylan, and very quickly I got to the record Blood on the Tracks by Dylan. 72, I think. And this for him was kind of his divorce record, more or less, like main long relationship, it busted up. And I listened to Tangled Up in Blue, Shelter from the Storm, some of those songs. And it was like, it spoke to all of those realities on a much deeper level and also a smarter level, but a more deep, heartfelt level. His musical, his lyrical expression. And it was like, it hit me like, you can do that with a song.
That's what music can do.
Pop music form or like folk pop music, whatever you'd call that.
Beautiful.
And it just blew me away. And then I started writing songs. And I remember like in my band at the time, at that point, then we were in a band called Greenhorn. And I was starting to fidget with songs, but I didn't know how to play guitar. You can't write a song on drums. Nope. And we were sitting there after a band practice, like, can you show me how to do a D chord? And they were like, do you want to do the hard rock chord or more like a Dylan D, like an open D, like you play on an acoustic? Show me the Dylan D. I still remember having that conversation with the guys. And then I started kind of fidgeting with guitar. And I use that because you need something kind of melodic, not just the beat.
Right, for sure.
Anyway, I just wanted to tell that story. Like, that's what got me kind of fidgeting with songs. And then we got the recording equipment after and started, messing. It's really fun to do home recording because then you can like hit play and like hear the song, all the different parts. And it's really it's a super geeky thrill.
I love that, John. I love this idea that like what really got you started with writing songs and wanting to make real music was you had an experience, right? You had this like painful breakup experience, but you heard a song that spoke to it and resonated with you and gave you that sense of like, oh, this is the power of music. And I think that's the reality. And that's the reality that like any kid listening to a song that speaks to them, be like, yes, somebody gets it. Somebody gets me.
Yes.
And that's so powerful.
Yeah. And it's like the song Tangled Up in Blue, he's talking about like, we were married when we first met, soon to be divorced. I helped her out of a jam, I guess, but I think I used a little too much force. That doesn't, I think that was part, hold on, it's telling me we only have 10 minutes left. I'm going to see if I can upgrade so we can actually do these interviews.
Tech issues, friends.
There was something about the analogies of songs. Like you could talk about something totally different.
Right.
And still, like as a whatever he was, 40-year-old guy at the time, speaking about your messy divorce. And even speaking about that in analogy, let me see if I can log in here. And yet it speaks to this high school kid whose girlfriend just dumped him for the high school quarterback,
Right, yeah, absolutely.
Let's see if this. Email address. Register.
You want to put that on the screen for everybody, John? When just let's make sure we keep this recorded.
I want to see if I can get this done within the 10 minutes that we have. I'm sorry about this, Stacie. I didn't know they had a time.
Oh, no. I thought Zoom calls, if they were just between two people, were unlimited.
I wonder if I have limited recording time.
Oh, I don't know. I don't spend a lot of time recording calls, so.
Okay.
I'm just going to sit here and uncomfortably look at myself, and it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, and I don't have the screen up anymore, so I'm just... Okay, now it's telling me that the password that I just set up isn't working. You know, you get to be a certain age and just tech in general is just so irritating.
Yes. It's because we're old, John. So congratulations on that.
I was thinking about just calling the whole box set just old.
Old man wants to make a record.
Yeah. I think the kids call them A tracks now.
Is that what the kids call them?
I remember when I was a kid
Technology.
seeing the old guy at McDonald's looking at the menu, all confused and being kind of impatient with the old man. I'm
Yeah.
not. This is
You
me.
need to-
I'm the old man
I was
standing
gonna
at.
say you need to not be impatient with the old man because you are the old man. So
Be nice to me. The year of my birth starts with 19. I'm from the
exactly.
century.
I was born in the last century.
Mhm.
Be patient with me.
I remember the turn of the century, FOVID, the whole thing.
I mean, I 100% do want to talk about it, then there'd be a lot of editing that would have to
This
be done.
meeting now has unlimited minutes.
Unlimited. Great. So we can talk politics then. In that case.
That's what happened in Star Wars, right? The Emperor got unlimited. He held unlimited minutes.
That's exactly what happened. This is just like Star Wars. Okay.
Yeah,
Well, now that we're back and we have some time, I do want to get into a few of the songs.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So you mentioned earlier you're releasing the 6 different, like in 6 different chunks or whatever, different segments, kind of going throughout your music career, starting way back in the day. And so we'll talk about some of the songs. You mentioned earlier the song "Dime to My Name," which is one of the ones I actually really talk about. Because I really enjoyed listening to it.
Okay, good.
And I feel like it has this interesting juxtaposition between like the sound of the song and then like the lyrics of the song. Because I could hear like to me, and I don't know music terms, and I'm going to apologize for just like not knowing how to ask intelligent music songs questions, but to me the song almost sounds beachy, right? Like I could be there's something about the percussion in it in particular that I'm like I could be like listening to this on the beach and having a good time and just kind of jamming in the background, right? But then when you like lean in and listen to the lyrics, it's not like a happy, casual, beachy song, right? So I just wanted to ask about that. Like, is that intentional? Are you trying to create that juxtaposition? Like,
so I'm wondering, I had in my head to make this juxtaposition. That's an example of not knowing what I'm doing yet. I knew a C chord, I knew an F chord and a G chord, and I was just messing around. And I'm trying to write lyrics at the time. Near the end of this album, and I'm sure we'll get to those songs, you start hearing a guy who's starting to actually not use songwriting as a means to just fundamentally like seem cooler than I really am. You know what I mean?
Yep.
All I was doing was trying to sound kind of like Cash or Dylan or somebody cool.
Yeah.
And write lyrics that sounded kind of what do you call it? Pessimistic about the world, kind of a Han Solo. I'm really cool.
Yes.
That's why when I look at these songs, I'm like, okay, this is me literally like this is a kid scratching around in the sand before he ultimately becomes kind of a halfway decent painter. You know what I mean?
Yeah. For sure.
So, Dime to My Name, really, it's just I knew 3 chords basically at the time that I could play confidently. I mean, I was a little better of a guitar player than that, I guess, but it's literally that dumb. There was
that doesn't have the intentionality that I gave.
But to me, it works. And when we get to the last one on the Wonder, that's more intentional, but that's a few years later too.
Yeah. That's the last one I want to talk about. Comes last, and I'm sure there's.
But the juxtaposition does kind of work, though, doesn't it? And you hear later.
I think it does.
This was before like Dave Matthews became a thing, but he's awesome at that. He makes these songs that have these kind of swing grooves, and you're just like, yeah. And then you listen, he's like, I'm buried deep in the ground, and everything's gonna die, and you're like,
it has that same sort of vibe to it. And so I really did just assume that was intentional, of like, and I appreciate that. I think it makes a listener work a little bit and like have to be a little intentional
Mhm.
because it's easy to just take in and take in and take in
Yep.
all sorts of stuff. And anything we take in, I think anything we take in affects us to some level, right?
Yep.
Affects our soul to some level, affects our mind to some level. And so I appreciate when something makes me pause and think
Yeah.
about what is it that I'm
Yeah.
taking in. And I think having a little bit of a tension or juxtaposition between way something sounds and what it's
Yep.
actually saying helps a person to pause and be like, wait, and to
Mhm.
process, what is this that I'm consuming?
Yep. And honestly, if I didn't have, although I slipped on it on accident, I think you're right. It does actually add to the song. But if I made music to it, that was more like, oh, I'm broken. I gotta get any money. It just sounds kind of like a
It
whiny,
wouldn't be as good of a song.
right?
Right.
And I don't like whiny songs. So you put a pin in it on this theme because I think, especially later on when I start writing more like satirical stuff, a lot of times I use like a certain musical genre that can't possibly be carrying those types of lyrics.
I have songs of yours in mind that I feel like you're hinting towards. So yes, I'm aware.
I can't wait. I just shared the song "Mum" with Robert, my friend Mike, here in our community team. And that one, I just remember writing that with you. I can't wait to tell that story because you were on the phone when I wrote that. We had you on speakerphone.
Yeah.
I just grabbed the guitar and literally wrote it while you were talking to Teresa on the phone.
That's awesome. I love it.
And
Okay,
that's the
well, we'll
song
get
that,
there.
yeah, it's just like funny lyrics, but taking this super serious kind of punk rock.
Yeah. That actually was a really fun. That was fun. So something to look forward to. If people are still listening to this interview, you guys are awesome. And that's something to look forward to.
Honestly, if I was just sitting there like at work and had this streaming in the background, I'm like, yeah, I'm listening to, like, I'm subscribing to this.
Subscribe, hit the bell, whatever it is the kids do these days.
You're like, that guy's almost as awesome as I am.
Speaking of things that like are a bit too angsty.
Yeah.
Your song Swan Song.
Mm-hmm.
The main question that came to mind when I listened to the song was how old were you when you wrote this?
Oh, 21 or 2. So after high school, I was kind of useless for a long time. Ultimately made my way down to Oshkosh, and I lived with a good friend named Will, and we were in a little band. That's one of the albums I made that it's not really fit for the most part, not really fit for human consumption because it was recorded so badly. But we were both just song nerds, and we just always worked on songs. And we made a little record. We were in our 2-man band was called The Poet's Cause because we were very young and earnest, all that kind of stuff. But I moved down there, and this one and the song Another Rendering of Heaven and Wonder all were kind of part of that. It seems like whenever I make a major move in my life, boom, a whole bunch of songs follow. And that was one of those. That was the first like boom, prolific, a bunch of songs come. Hurricane Coming was before that. Never mind.
Yeah, that was a little earlier.
Yep.
Okay.
With Swan Song, yeah, that's an example of I like the music and the lyrics work too well together, and I don't like singing it. I don't. But my friend Jay, like we were working on an album together over the past few years, but it's just hard to get together and finish. But JJ and the Greasy Fingers. And we were goofing off, like, let's make a record. What songs do you have? We had acoustics and just kind of sitting around having a couple drinks and sharing songs. And this one, he was like, dude, that is so good. To me, it's like, it's a little bit on the nose. You know.
So the reason I asked how old you were when you wrote it is, and this is going to sound like so much more mean than I mean it to be. So I apologize already.
Does I sound like a 12-year-old girl when I
was going to say a teenage girl. But
At least you had like a teen and not a tweener. Thank you, Stacie.
That's right. So in a nice way, what I can say is I think this would resonate really well with teenage girls who are kind of going through this, like, does anybody care about me? Does anything that I do matter? Like, does anybody remember me if I died? Like, so I think it really resonates at that level, but dang, that's angsty. And like, oh, okay. Yeah. So I just also want to assure you, John, like, people would miss you, you know?
Right. Well, you know, the thing though, that I'm saying, I think the thing that if I want to give myself some, like, okay, this has some real value, is that I'm not talking about me as much as the songs. You know what I mean? Like, do the songs have any value? This is me starting to think about these things. Like, if I quit playing, does anybody care at all? And then there's just that weird bridge. And I love doing this, like where you put a bridge so it changes keys or whatever.
Yep.
And then you're saying something totally different than the rest of the song, but yet somehow it works together. If your head starts spinning crazy in your mind, the wind blows so
Yes.
hard it makes you blind. Trust me, everything is going to be just fine. It just
Yep.
takes time. Like,
Yeah.
sounds kind of like all of a sudden an old guy, like maybe speaking into this angst, saying,
Mm-hmm. And I heard it that way as well when I heard the song, and I feel like
okay,
that's what for me kind of redeems the song
yep,
and makes
me
it,
too.
gives it its value, because it's like,
Yeah.
okay, yes, there's this
Mhm.
like hope and wisdom and
Yeah.
truth that's being spoken into the end of this. So yeah,
We
absolutely.
had just seen Beck. I don't know much about Beck, but really it was Beck and Neil Young. And so we went
Hmm.
and Neil Young. I think this was before he was like fully communist or whatever. I don't know, probably. But anyway, like, so then I was listening to a lot of his more acoustic, like his Harvest Moon, more of his, I don't like his Crazy Horse stuff, like just
Okay.
crank up the overdrive and hit a big open G. It just sounds kind of crappy to me. He's a great songwriter though. And he had that way to create a mood with that kind of acoustic and doing some weird chord things. And I just was tinkering and tried to be heavy in some way. But yeah, I mean, ultimately you leave the song kind of going, oh, that sucks, dude. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't want to do that all that much. I want to do something that makes you think a little bit or whatever.
No,
But I do
but
like the song.
nice. Yeah, I
And
think
sorry.
to sprinkle that sort of thing in every once in a while is not a bad thing, because it
Mhm.
makes it enlightening. There are times
Yeah.
when
If
you're
that was
like,
my primary thing, I would have quit years ago, Stacie, honestly, because I would have been so depressed
mhm.
with my own music. But a lot of my stuff like it is a little bit, again, great value, Dave Matthews, right? I mean, he is an unbelievably good songwriter and singer and musician. And like he's one of my all-time favorites. But yeah, he goes to those heavy places that are hard to go unless you have something kind of musically palatable. Like if you just said it,
Right.
but then you put that groovy music and you can
Right.
kind of
Which is
go.
why I like Dime to My Name better, because it has
Yep.
that groovy music.
Yep.
Like saying something pretty heavy, right? But,
Yeah. And two, part of it is the code. I guess similar to poetry maybe, but I'm not a poet in that way. Like I need the music.
mhm.
But part of it is the code. Like you can't say exactly what you're trying to say because it
Right.
hurts too much. But
Right.
you can use code and analogy and symbol
Absolutely.
be able to get at it in a way that other people, and then it's in the code and the symbol that other people meet you and then they can relate to it. It's like,
Nice.
that's what you do with your best friend. Uh, when everything's falling apart, you just need somebody to cry with. You get what I mean? But I don't think you want to subject any kind of audience to that. You want to find some way to meet them there and have them
For
go
sure.
away.
Yeah.
Not just going, oh, dude, that sucks. Sorry, man.
Right. Right. Right.
Sorry, I'm over
Right.
talking about this stuff, but this is fascinating stuff to me.
I think it's fascinating as well. So I'm happy to listen and to hear
Thank
about
you.
it.
I hope both of our listeners agree.
Exactly. All two of you, I hope you're enjoying this.
Yeah.
We're enjoying it.
Mom's
thanks.
already clicked out of this by now. She's like,
That's right. Like, I don't know. My mom is listening still, though. She's like, I love this. Share with all her friends. Okay. So I want to talk about, we're not going to talk about every song, but I want to talk about a couple more.
Mhm.
So one that I really, really enjoyed, which may be surprising for you. I don't know. I didn't see it on your list of like, this is my favorite, but
Yeah.
was Madman's Boots.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. From the opening.
Okay.
I love this. Like before you haven't said a word yet, right?
Yeah.
And there's just this like the percussion, this like it sounds like this stomping boots. And you
Exactly.
get this sense of like something ominous is going to happen. And
Yep.
and that tone, that vibe carries out through the whole song.
Yep.
I felt like I was in like foggy London town. There's some like Jack the Ripper murder mystery going on. And I freaking loved it. So I don't know if I even have a question really in there, except for just to say, like, I loved everything about that. I feel like this is a song that like it had a perspective, it set a tone from the beginning, it hooked me in, and I was like, yes, more of this. I'm gonna listen to this on repeat. Like,
who is this guy? What is he doing?
Right. And it's like, and I love your music in general, but this doesn't remind me of anything else.
Nope. That is a very unique bird, and I almost didn't include it. Because it's so obviously dark, and
it's dark, but in the coolest way. Not in a like not in like, oh, this is dark and heavy, and now I'm just gonna
Yeah.
sad, like, but in
Not like
a
in a shoegazer gothy kind of way.
no, it
It's
makes
just
me want to
really
write a
dark.
story. Like
Yeah.
it's cool.
Yeah, it feels kind of like almost like Italian noir horror flick or something.
Yes, yes, 100%. And so anyway, I don't know that I have a question
Yeah.
really. I guess maybe like
But I'll say this, and then I want to hear if you do have a question.
sure.
You caught exactly where that song came from and what that song was doing. I'll say that much. So it was, I don't even remember the exact circumstances, but this is during the Oshkosh era. I had been out and, well, I'll say I had been overserved that night.
Okay.
And it was late, like, bars closing on a Saturday or Friday, like at 2:30. It was pretty well after that. And I was crossing over one of the bridges there over the Fox River, and it was damp and it was
Yes.
foggy.
Yes.
And I was really drunk. And I just had almost like this sense of like, I'm going down a road right now
Mm.
that could end up leading into some significant. I don't know if I could have articulated in my head at that moment, right? But almost like I knew I was going in a dark direction in my life. And so how dark is dark? And so the
Right.
songwriter, you're asking questions. And I could hear my footsteps because it was middle of the night, nobody was around. And I had the
Mm.
idea of having this back and forth. If you have like headphones on, you can hear it. One goes from the left and right. So, and then I've also added stuff since you heard it. I mixed it better. The mix you have is pretty
Mm.
bad. But I also added broom. Just really quiet. So you feel the kind of,
Mm.
it really is ominous and
Yes,
dark.
ominous is exactly the word that I wrote down. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, like a weird stalker kind of. Yeah. I've, I've seen you draw me closer bit by anxious bit. I dog the
Mm-hmm.
boots of the madman. They're the only ones that
They're the
fit.
only ones that fit. I wrote that down because I think that's brilliant, John. Like,
That's one of those where I don't remember actually taking pen to paper on that, but I remember having the vaguest idea. And I remember recording it with Will, who I wish the original recording wasn't so horrible. And I can't get to the
mm,
original files and remix. That's 20
sure.
years ago. But he did this piano all over it. And but the vibe was exactly the same. But now it's a little clearer, less things
Sure.
going on. Uh, I think I added I think I added just some really bizarre piano too that made it even a little creepier without being overplayed. So I think you're gonna
Mm.
like the final mix because I added stuff without slathering. You know what I mean? I
Yep,
think that one's,
absolutely. You didn't
but
kill
it's weird, and I'm a little shy about putting that in because it's so dark. But my friend
it.
Robert
I'm
too was
so
always like,
glad that you
"Dude, I
added
love
it.
that song."
Yeah,
So, and I told him, I texted him the other day, like I'm literally putting Madman's boots on my box, and he was like, "Do it. That is awesome."
good. Yes, I
So
100% agree. I had never heard it before. I'd never heard anything
hmm.
of yours like it. And for me, it was the standout song
Okay.
in the set. I just
Certainly
enjoyed it
creates a
so much.
mood more effectively than anything else
Yep,
so far, doesn't
yep.
it?
It really does. So I'm glad yeah, like I said, I don't really have a question. I was going to ask sort of like where it came from, but you answered that already. So
Thank you,
that's what
though.
I
That's
want to.
cool that you dug that because it is, you feel a little weird as a creator, right? To actually put that into the world and you never know, like they're going to come
Right.
and arrest me maybe, or,
Right. How is this going to be
you
received?
know, make me
Yeah,
president, some terrible thing.
possibly. But again, we're not having that conversation right now.
But I'm
So,
going there. I'm kind of fishing in that fishing hole a little bit. Hey, you're a
so
psychopath. You want to be
you're, you could stage a coup and steal an election. I mean, what? Nothing?
work
No.
less, make more?
Hmm. Interesting. So moving along then to another rendering of heaven.
Oh yeah,
This song, so this is the only song in this set that I already knew
you already
because
knew
you
this
have
one.
it on
Okay.
an album already. I think it's on your home
Yep.
album.
Recorded many
Um,
years later.
right. So I really enjoy it. I've enjoyed it since I first heard it. Um, I just want to talk about because I'm a lyrics girl, you know,
Yeah.
and so I want to talk about a couple of the lines in it
Yeah. Yeah.
that I really like. Hang on, sorry, I'm pulling up my
Yeah.
notes here, which I have not been looking at.
Dude, this is
Um,
so fun, by the way. Somebody's like asking me about my songs and my lyrics. Like, I'm like totally like when I was a kid, my brother and I used to take brooms and we would listen to Neil Diamond's Hot August Night live record and we
Ooh,
would
yeah.
do the show and all that. This kind of feels like a grown-up version of that. Like I'm pretending that my music is like a thing and somebody's interviewing me about it. So
That's
fun.
awesome. I love it. This is so fun for me too. So you know what? If nobody else enjoys it, we're having a good time. You'll have
Happy
to edit
Friday.
this out, but this is also like getting me out of youth group staff training tonight. So I was like, oh, I already had plans. Sorry, can't make
Somebody's
it.
going to watch this and be like, oh, that's why.
Oh, yeah, but the people are going to watch it and be like, Zach Richards, and be like, all right, that's fair. Like,
Yeah, okay. He'll dig it. Hopefully Teresa
that's a
will
better
dig
thing to be
it,
doing.
but,
Okay, so another rendering of heaven. And at the beginning of the song, there's this
yeah.
line about like, I might paint a picture.
Yep.
I don't have to stop half done to make a living.
Yes.
And that I love that. And I want to talk to that, like this tension that an artist feels, right?
Yep.
Like you just want to create something, but also like you want to be able to eat today. And this idea that in the context of this song, that is another rendering of heaven, I can just stop and like paint a picture, you know, because I want to.
Yep.
And I don't have to stop half done. And I don't know. I think there's something so beautiful and so human about that.
Yeah. That was the starting point of the song. Like just the idea, because right, even then we had rents to make and
right.
I worked at a gas station, but I had to go. And then I became a cab driver during that era. And I actually made decent money on that, but it was a hassle because I want to make art. So I'll say this is my old man perspective of this. At the time, it was just that sentiment, plain and simple. And that a feeling of that's how it ought to be. And in some ways it should. When we're in Evan Rock, I have to go drive a cab around, right?
Right.
To make some money. Sing songs all day to Jesus. But I'll say this in my old guy, kind of conservative Christian perspective. I think about how many songs I haven't written because I had to make a living. But I also think about how many songs I probably never would have even come up with if I didn't have to make a living.
Yes.
Do you see what I mean? I'm not sure if I would even know what to paint if it wasn't for sort of like I went to college when I was I was like 24, 25. Yep. And I saw all like the 18-year-olds going, why do we have to listen to this philosophy stuff? This is so dumb. But I had context, like, and I think you see this in a lot of artists. They work really hard and they're grinding and they've got these great songs. They make their first album or two, and then they start wearing pink pajamas. And then they start getting further and further away from regular life.
And they don't really have anything
drugs
to say.
And all the different things that come with rock stardom. And then their albums aren't as good anymore. Most bands, their first record it's got passion and fire. And that happens from conflict, from having to go to work all day.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, John, because I mean, and I think that's one of the things actually, as we're doing this project that we'll see unfold, this first set of songs, there's some really good songs in here. I know because I've listened to more of your music than this. There are better songs that come later. And those better songs come later because you had lived more and you had struggled more and you've experienced things more deeply. Absolutely. And if anyone who could just sit around all day and just create art, unless there's some like incredible genius that, just completely innate, art needs to be about something. It needs to be about something. And
I've
got that from work and striving.
Absolutely. And I will say this, though, as I'm approaching 50, I feel like I have plenty of experience kind of in the bank.
Yep.
If all of a sudden
maybe now
the right songs. I'm good.
Good, I've done, yeah. You've been through enough at this point. You're like, I got reams of work I could create here. We're good.
My backlog of experiences to convert.
Don't need any more experiences at this
I'm
point.
good. At this point, I'll just take $1 million and sit around and write songs all day.
Fair.
The cool thing, though, is here I'm in this Oshkosh era, and this is right before like a major conversion in my life. But here you have the beginning. So especially, it's good that you asked this right after Bad Man's Boots, because then you get the sense of like, okay, I'm going in a dark direction here. And let me just project that musically way too far, but not impossible, right?
Right.
And then I'm starting to question what is this? So this is like somebody who hasn't really been formed well in the faith at all. My kind of pretty secular idea of what heaven is like, I love the Cubs. I'm meet Harry Carey, who's just a great guy, Cub fan. He announced all the
Yep.
games. He would sing the Take Me Out to the Ball Game. There's going to be a girl who's not going to dump me. We don't have to go to work when it's raining.
Sounds like heaven, right?
Right. And I'm playing a gig and I got an audience who loves what I'm doing. And I'm just writing my songs for them. And everyone can get in free because, heaven is going to be very social.
Even the beggar comes in, he's got change,
Right. The whole thing is just like, without really knowing that much about Jesus and certainly not anything about theology, what are some analogous things that seem heavenly? Not having to go to work was the first thing I thought of. Being able to kind of do what you want.
Yes, but it is at least a little bit deeper than that, because it's not just getting to do whatever you want, but it's like doing something that's worth doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And really there's like two verses, like a lot of it is referencing making music and creating art and beauty and elevating.
So there's still something there that was naturally good.
And Jesus is coming in. What the heck? He's got his tambourine. He's going to jam.
Okay, see, John, you're stealing my lines. That's where I was going to go next. And he didn't really have a very good theology, but what you knew is Jesus could come in on the tambourine, and that's going to make a song better. So
what was that movie? Are you telling me Jesus Christ can hit a curveball? You telling me Major League? What a classic! But are you telling me Jesus Christ wouldn't play tambourine with me?
Come on,
he crushes.
What's it all about if it's not Jesus on the tambourine?
Woo-hoo, he sings backups and crushes the tambourine. Maybe Jesus is too much Robert in my mind. I don't know, but I don't even know Robert.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But so it's cool because this tees up then for when we get to the next record, which I had a major conversion, went on mission and all that. And again, another major life event that ended up being extremely prolific. And the hard part of that album, that's the Just Like Us stuff that very well. The hard part of that is what not to include, because I don't want it to be comprehensive. I'm trying to.
Yes, but it would be hard to narrow that down. That's a great album.
And there's a lot of stuff that never made that album. Some of it went on the home record or different places, or hasn't really gotten an officially good recording. But it's just interesting because I think this one or Wonder, probably this one will be the last before we get into the kind of what I'm calling offhand, like the saved era, to go by Dylan, but he had his three like evangelical Christian records, which I love, by the way. And there's some lousy theology in those, but it's
there's some good theology in those though too, and we'll talk about that. There's some lyrics that I think are worth talking about. So making that transition then from this era into that era, the song you just mentioned, Wonder. I think, there's probably things you could say about that. I think it's a good transitional song, right? Where you're starting to get a little bit more serious about your songwriting, and there's some interesting lyrics, and there's a sense of something deeper. Sorry, that wasn't so much a question as it was a statement, but can you speak to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the story behind this song, there was a girl, her name was Corey. She was a friend of mine, and we had this small group of folks who'd run around getting adventures. She was just really cute, but not oh, she's such a babe. She's just sweet, and we all liked her. It's easy to get along with, and everyone kind of fell in love with her, but not in like a literal way. Just like everybody liked to be around her. And then after high school, then I was down at that retreat center I had mentioned, working there, doing like cutting down trees and mowing lawns, like just doing a bunch of weird, uneducated, manly stuff. And I loved it. Then I got a call from my friend Will. Do you remember Corey? She killed herself. And and I remember I sat down, we had this back porch. It was beautiful. I mean, it was really beautiful in rural Illinois. There was a pond back there and all this. And I just sat there, and it was one of those, it was autumn, right? And it was rainy and the leaves were falling. And just having this feeling of, lots of feelings, but appalled. First feeling was appalled that the world kept spinning, the leaves kept falling. This is a human being who literally just ended her own life, and the rain doesn't even care. Like the regular cycles of life don't stop. And then there was also like a bitterness, like, well, girl, you made this choice. Then there's also like, and at the time too, this was before like mental illness was invented. That's the thing. So you sort of don't ask questions about like, were you really competent to make this choice, or were you compromised, or
those weren't things you were even thinking about.
Yeah, and then I remember we'd get drunk and have arguments, me and Will, in our apartment. But then when I moved to Oshkosh is when I wrote this and started really thinking about it more, about whether or not there was like, could she still go to heaven? And I'm like, the last thing she did was kill herself, but then God is really merciful,
Right.
and so those
Right.
are all these questions. But then also in it, you have, and again, the juxtaposition, and especially at the end, I wonder where you are tonight. I've been wondering for so long, but when the sun comes up and the rain finally stops, I'll hardly remember you're gone. In other words, like,
Mm.
and bing, bang, doom, bing,
Yep.
that.
Yep. It resolves on this really happy note where
Yeah.
you're like,
When you
okay.
talk about bitterness, I think this one kind of has the most like, where I look at Swan Song, at least my feeling writing it was more kind of sad or pensive or whatever.
Mhm.
And this one, like, I'm questioning these things, but I'm kind of pissed,
Sure.
because like
Yeah.
everybody, like, you murdered somebody that a lot of people loved.
Right.
And we had lost touch, and it's too bad. She moved on to Indiana, and I was, uh, yeah. And the thing is, too, is I had no idea. None of us did. Like, she
Right.
moved on, I think, like her stepdad or something. I don't know the whole story, but and then just all of a sudden you find out she killed herself. I had no idea she was in any pain or in some
Mm.
abusive
And that
situation.
is exactly, the name of the song is Wonder, right?
Hmm.
And it has all these questions going through it.
Yeah.
But that not knowing that somebody's in that place and then just
Yeah.
getting this news that they killed
Yeah.
themselves, that is exactly what happens in the brain is
Yeah.
all the questions. Like, oh, I wonder if I had known something, could I have said
Yeah.
something? Like if
Yep.
I just all of those questions are what
Yep.
come through.
Why didn't you
Um,
call somebody?
right. Yeah,
Like
it's
all of
all,
us,
I
they said,
mean,
yeah, we lost touch, but I would have taken some time off of work and gone and got you out of some situation, or, we would have
right,
gotten a bunch of
right,
people together and
right,
helped. The
right,
heck?
right.
But then we
And so
don't know like what kind of mental illness she might have had, what kind of
right,
pain she was in. So this
right.
song is kind of going into all that. And that's when I think for the first time I completely dropped. Even Bad Man's Boots has a sense of like, oh, this will be cool and I'll seem kind of dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
This one,
Well, you weren't trying to sound any particular way.
nope. I was
It was
not
just
even remotely
honest.
trying to sound cool. It was all about expressing these different things going through my heart, regardless of what other people might
Yeah,
think. That's the first time I was free from caring at all what other people think. And I think it ends up being a really cool song.
I
But again,
do. I think it's a
right?
cool song too. I
Thank you.
didn't know any of the backstory when I
Okay.
heard it. I didn't know that it was about somebody who committed suicide, but I'm not surprised,
Yeah, right.
I mean, I got that it was about somebody dying. I wouldn't have necessarily
Yep.
known the
Yep.
background of it. But even like the sound musically, the sound of it has this sort of like mournful,
Mhm.
longing
Yeah.
sound
And it goes
to
down to
it.
minor key stuff, and yeah. It's a hard
Yeah.
song to sing and play too, because like the key is a little low, or then I bring it up. What you heard was kind of too high on it.
Mm.
And so I think I'm gonna redo it and move it back down before it's done.
Yeah, I did think vocally it was like it sounded like it might be stretching you a little bit.
Because I want to get like, I was talking to my wife who's actually a good singer.
She's a very good singer,
And
yeah.
I said, I want it to sound kind of like, and I do this a lot, by the way, songwriting and recording all this. It's pilfery. You take the best and you rob this part and you rob this part and you
Sure.
mix them together in a way that's unexpected and you add your own flavor to it and you have something new. Oh man, I want to do something totally original. And when somebody tells me, like, a young songwriter, I just think you're not going to get far if you hang on to that, because I'm going to make a chord that nobody has ever heard.
You're
Okay, there's
really
probably a
not.
reason,
Right.
like the 3 note triad is kind of in our DNA. The
There's
G
something
don't
that
make this
sounds good to us.
right. And 90% of what we listen to in popular music is going to be like the 1 to the 4. I don't want to get too nerdy and techy, but uh so anyway, I'm going to lower it, sing it. The song "Oh" by Dave Matthews. It's like quiet singing, and it sounds really intimate and sweet. But before I decided to do that, I raised up the key so I would have to push my voice and make it sound cooler.
Mm-hmm.
Part of the problem is I have, like, they talk about people with like a 4 octave range. I have
Right.
like a half an octave range.
This is like one and a half.
Really, if I hit these 4 notes, my voice is awesome. But I haven't found those notes yet.
We're not sure what those 4 notes are yet. Some new young artist is going
I
to
got my
discover
piano
them,
back
but
here. I'll find them.
Sean, too hard on yourself. Um, Okay, cool. I think we talked about all the things that I wanted
Yeah.
to talk about. I know we didn't hit every song, but we hit the ones that I'm like, ooh, this is something I
Yeah.
have thoughts about. Do you have any last thoughts, remarks, things that you'd like to
Don't
say to your
you
audience?
you my audience. Are you there?
You still with us?
Actually, you know what? You talked about the songs that I would have wanted to talk about. And I would
Hmm.
put Taxman and I Lost It in the same category as Dime to My Name. Just a
Yep.
guy with some chords trying to be cool.
Yep.
But they're not terrible songs. They're fun.
No, absolutely not.
Um, I have to say though, I am really excited to get to the next one. And I think you're gonna love asking questions and talking over the Dust Like Us stuff, because there's some of it is theologically pretty thick and pretty
Yeah.
interesting. And
There are some songs in those albums, like the next few segments I think that we'll do that I've
mhm.
been listening to for years. And so they've
Yeah,
had time
yeah.
percolate in my brain. And I'm like, oh yeah, let's get into it. So
That honors me so much that, like, quick story. eh, I don't know, a year ago, maybe 6 months or a year ago, and this has happened a couple of times. A dude I knew in high school. We weren't like great friends, but he was a decent dude. His name's Todd, good guy. He just kind of sends me a message on Facebook saying, "Hey, John, I'm on a road. This is the last one. He was like, I'm on a road trip with this other guy, Sean, who actually was a pretty good friend of mine back in the day. Really good guys." And he's like, "Look what we're listening to." He sent me a screenshot. They're listening to uh, Lukewarm Whiskey and an Ice Cold Heart, that record I have, which I love that song. And Jay is singing backups. And it's just, and then I hear you talking about, I've been listening to this stuff for years, and you have intelligent questions because you actually listened and received it. That's, it'd be cool to have a million people streaming my stuff. In
mhm.
some ways, this is cooler because it is about the connection and about you put the analogies out there and we can kind of meet there.
Yeah,
Can't
absolutely.
really see somebody's heart totally raw, but with the code of music and songwriting and lyrics, we can meet there, and it's just really
Absolutely.
cool, and there's a
It's beautiful.
connection there, and that's kind of why I do it. So Todd,
Mhm.
if you're still listening, or if you're listening to this at all, thanks, bro. And thank you, Stacie, and thank you anybody who listens, because at the end of the day, I'm more of a music listener than anything. Like a friend of mine today sent me. He says starts the day with, I think the Blue album by Weezer might be the greatest rock record of all time. I was like, that is not the way to start this Friday with me, bro.
No, that's a
Uh,
hot take. Okay.
but I listened to it. I had to at first. I had to argue. Like, do you know how many rock albums are
Right, right, right. You're saying best? Come on.
So we're just going. I am like I wouldn't even know how to start categorizing my sort of Mount Rushmore of rock albums. Like,
Mm,
I don't even know where I would start. But so I had to get past that. Like, I started listening, thinking, okay, is this the goat of rock records? And I couldn't access it. Like new Star Wars fans, they haven't enjoyed a movie in 30 years because they're being,
right,
is
right.
this what I want it to be, or is this categorized as this or that? To
Just
receive art,
enjoy
you
a song, man.
have to open your heart and just let it in. And then later on, you can go back and go, okay, what moved me? What didn't? Do I want to listen to it again? Well, no, but it was a good record. You know what I mean?
Right,
Like, in the record,
right, right.
but I'm like, and if I had grown up at that time, I told them, I said, I would have wanted to jam this with my high school bands. Like, some of this
For
stuff is
sure.
cool and fun, and it's a good record. And some of the writing was particularly, like, some of the lyrics were really good. Like, they're good, but
Right.
you have
Doesn't
to,
make
like,
it the best record of all time.
right? I don't know. I'm not
Now,
there.
now you mentioned something that just made me think of another question,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
which is you mentioned Mount Rushmore.
yeah.
And so I was just wondering about like what presidents do you think do or do not belong on Mount Rushmore?
I'm kind
Should
of a
anybody from the modern canon be added, let's say, to
modern canon. Whew. Reagan, does he count?
yeah, that's not the one I've heard a case for though.
Are you serious? Uncle Joe?
Yeah. Yep.
Oh
That's
my
the one I've
God.
heard a case for.
Ah, no.